The first really major move just went down in the NBA offseason this year, and it was the Josh Giddey to the Chicago Bulls trade that I'm sure pretty much everyone watching this video is very familiar with right now, but I'm going to be kind of breaking down why I think this is kind of an odd move. Not a bad move by really either side, but in my opinion, strange on the Bulls side, and I think a very good move for OKC, but I'm just going to say why I think it's a little bit of a interesting move, kind of on both ends, and I'm going to be getting to why I think both sides potentially could benefit from this, and mainly on the Chicago Bulls side, why I think it's a semi-risky trade as well. So the first thing that I'm really going to dive into, let's just going to get a trade package itself to really just lay the foundation here. The trade package was that the OKC's Thunder would be getting Alex Caruso, while the Chicago Bulls would be getting Josh Giddey. Now this isn't a very complicated trade, it's just a player swap at its core, and it really isn't like a world-shattering trade either, but I do think it is still a pretty significant one as well. And let's just kind of start on the Oklahoma City Thunder size of thing. The biggest reason why I think this trade is such a good move for them is because he just fits a lot better with the Thunder. As in my opinion, although I think Giddey is a good player, I think he's just too much of a true point guard to really fit on a team with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander on it, because obviously Shai is going to be the one dribbling the ball up the floor 90% of the time, no matter how good of a true point guard Josh Giddey actually is. That's because you want Shai to have the ball in his hands, and with Giddey's lack of shooting ability, at least lack of elite shooting ability, you can't really have him playing off ball, and he's just not as effective as he would be if he was playing as a true point guard in his natural position. So they kind of just had a clash of positions and clash of play styles that really wasn't ideal for what they were trying to go with now that they have Shai, an MVP level player, on their team. So really getting rid of Giddey was kind of a foregone conclusion, and for them to be able to go ahead and get Alex Caruso, in my opinion, is an extremely great home run fit for this team, because it now forms a triangle of a guard rotation that includes Alex Caruso, Cason Wallace, and Lou Dort. That is going to be one of the best defensive backcourts in the entire NBA. Now, the Boston Celtics probably still have a more talented and all-around better backcourt, including defensively with Jrue Holiday and Derek White. But I think as far as a trifecta goes, that's probably the best three-man guard rotation in the NBA on the defensive side of the ball. And not on top of that, it's not like they only play defense. Lou Dort and Alex Caruso are both extremely capable three-point shooters as well, and so is Cason Wallace as only a rookie. So I think for sure these three guys are going to really be great two-way guards all year for them. Going to give teams absolute fits on the defensive side of the ball, while also being able to spread the floor for the star scorers and Jalen Williams, Shai, and Chet Holmgren as well, and it's going to be fitting much better than what Josh Giddey was able to provide them just last year. And just to kind of emphasize how much better of a shooter Alex Caruso was last year than Josh Giddey, Caruso last year, for the past 2 years actually, has shot 36% from 3 and 41% from 3. That is better than Josh Giddey's career high in his entire career for the past 3 seasons, as the best Giddey has ever shot was 33% from the three-point line. So you're getting a pretty significant upgrade at the guard position from shooting, and that's going to help Shai Gilgeous tremendously, because in the playoffs we saw people were just leaving and begging Josh Giddey to shoot the three. Like, they really wanted him to. Now, Giddey isn't incompetent from deep. Like, he still had games where he legitimately looked like he was a decent player from there and could shoot, but he just couldn't do it consistently enough to not let teams just completely play off of him. And when they play off of a guy like Giddey, it makes Shai life way harder, because the lane's now more congested, it's easier to help, and things like that. But now with a guy like Caruso instead of Giddey, you cannot play off of him because of how much better Caruso is as a shooter and how much more consistent he is as well from deep. So I think overall, he's just going to be a much better player for the Oklahoma City Thunder system, and I think it's going to make Shai's life easier. It's obviously going to make Jalen Williams and Chet life easier as well, and then with them also having a significant increase on the defensive side of the ball, I just think all around this was an excellent move by the Oklahoma City Thunder. And now to kind of get where things get a little bit weird, okay? It kind of gets a little strange on the Chicago Bulls side of things. And the reason it's just a little confusing is because they have Lonzo Ball now and Josh Giddey on the same team. Now, I know there's been a lot of buyout rumors about Lonzo Ball because, I mean, his trade value, let's be honest, is zero because he hasn't played for the past, 2-3 years. Like, it's obvious why Lonzo's trade value is as low as it is, and it's not the Chicago Bulls' fault the guy got injured, but now they're in a situation to where they either have to buy out Lonzo and get nothing in return for him, or keep Lonzo Ball on the roster because he still could be a solid player if he comes back and can be fully healthy. But now you have basically the same exact player on the same team, and I don't think they can coexist in the same lineup because they play extremely similar styles of basketball, and it's very hard to have two pass-first bigger point guards in your starting lineup because, I mean, someone has to shoot the ball. But also, I don't think either one of them, although Lonzo is a pretty solid three-point shooter at this point, or at least he was before his injury, no telling what Lonzo's going to look like when he comes back. So their offense just might not be enough. So then you're in the situation where you would have to bench either Josh Giddey or Lonzo. And I don't think either guy would go for that because, one, Lonzo was probably an above-average point guard before he went down, and Josh Giddey literally wanted a trade because he wasn't willing to come off the bench at OKC next year. That was the biggest reason why he kind of requested a trade, right? So I don't think either one of them would go for that. So there's really no situation where you can have both of them on the roster. So it's going to probably result in a buyout of Lonzo. But then when you buy out Lonzo, you're now stuck with the exact same team you had before the Josh Giddey trade, just without your all-defensive team player in Caruso. So it is literally just a worse version of the team that you had before the trade. So I think from that perspective, it's just a completely lateral move. Now you could argue, yes, Giddey is younger and maybe has a higher ceiling at this point, could raise the ceiling long-term of this team. That's an argument you could make. I wouldn't buy it, but that's definitely probably the argument you could go with. And the only reason that this could even make semi-sense for the Chicago Bulls is that they're going to go on a complete fire sale of this roster. If they do that, this trade makes a lot more sense. But as of the current circumstances, with LaVine, DeRozan, and Vucevic all presumably going to be on the roster next year, this makes zero sense. The only possible reasonable explanation is that the Chicago Bulls are planning to go on a full-on rebuild mode and blow up this entire roster and just want to get younger at that point guard position. But then, even if you kind of go into that scenario, it still doesn't make that much sense because pretty much all of the stars on their team have the lowest value possible that they've had in a very long time in their careers. As I mean, for one, DeMar DeRozan is an unrestricted free agent and doesn't have to come back, so he could just walk. Like, if you start blowing up the roster, DeMar is going to walk, obviously. He's a vet. He's not going to want to play on a terrible team. So he's going to walk. And then LaVine barely played this year, and there was tons of issues around him. Like, they were trying to trade him at the trade deadline, they didn't, and it was just a very weird situation with LaVine and the Bulls this year. And LaVine's trade value is probably about the lowest it's been in a few years at this point, so you can't expect to get too much for him. I'm sure you still get a solid haul, but probably not as much as you would have at the peak of LaVine's trade value. And then Nikola Vucevic as well is now a 33-year-old center who just shot the lowest percent from the three-point line since the 2013 through 14 season of his career. So he is on the downslope for sure. He doesn't really play defense, and he's not the ideal modern-day center at this point, and with his age and everything, it's going to be pretty hard to find a solid return for Nikola Vucevic besides just kind of dumping him. So with all of their key guys legitimately having almost near to none value or just a lot lower value than you would normally be expecting of a guy the caliber of some of their players, I think that they're in a situation where either, one, the trade they just made just gives them a worse version of the team they already had last year, or two, they blow up the team at the worst opportune time in the past few years. Either way, not a great situation to be in for the Bulls. I can understand why you did it, because I'm sure they wanted to get younger and they want to try to usher in a new era of guys, and Josh Giddey is a solid player, so, I mean, it's nice to have him on the roster. But I think you could have got more for Alex Caruso, and you should have traded him earlier when people were offering you way more for him, and then you got stuck in a situation where you didn't have that many offers on the table, which that's a whole different can of worms. But overall, I just think the Chicago Bulls kind of managed the situation kind of weirdly and now find themselves in a very, very weird and very sensitive situation as well. And then even on top of that, if they do go rebuild mode, their young talent, I mean, they have some interesting guys like Ayo Dosunmu, Cody White, who's okay, Patrick Williams even, kind of interesting guys, but Patrick Williams can barely play. Cody White has to show he can consistently do this like year in and year out. Josh Giddey, I wouldn't say he's going to ever be a star, maybe a very solid starting point guard and a high-level starter, but I don't think he'll ever be a superstar or anything like that. And then, I mean, even the other guys is still not very interesting, as even if you kind of go into their reserve and G Leaguers, like Sonogo is probably their most interesting guy, and I mean, even him, he's probably a few years away of being legitimately a starter rotational guy in an NBA rotation. I mean, if they're rebuilding, I'm sure he'll get playing time, so maybe he could be an okay rotational guy in the future, possibly. Ayo Dosunmu, I mean, he's solid, but I mean, at this point, I think he's just a role player. We know what he's going to be. Terry, he's just been rough. He doesn't look great. And then Julian Phillips, in my opinion, is just not good. So they have a weird young group, a weird team in general, and find themselves in a fairly weird situation as well. So overall, I'm not sure what the Bulls are going to do going forward in the future, but it should be interesting at least to see how they deal with it. But overall, I think this trade was great for the Oklahoma City Thunder, weird for the Chicago Bulls, and I think both teams are now in much different situations, and it should be fun to watch them both plan out and kind of play out as the future goes along. But unfortunately, guys, that's my first video, so comment below. Do you agree with me? Do you think that the OKC Thunder won? Do you think Chicago somehow won? What do you think Chicago should do? I want to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. And if you like, point to the like button and subscribe button, it means the absolute word to me. And I hope you have a blessed day, because I had a blessed day, so you need to have a blessed day. All glory to God. See you in the next video. Goodbye. Boo. Blah.